Hi, and thanks for checking out the channel. If you'd like to get in touch with me, ask me any questions, or share your experiences, you can visit me at meditationwithjessica.com. So this is a talk and a guided meditation about how mindfulness can help you to have better sex. One of the ways that can be most helpful in the beginning is to get in touch with your body, to learn to feel the sensations of pleasure in your body. So many folks get caught in the mind during sex, and it can turn sex into an anxiety-producing experience rather than a pleasure-producing experience. So the guided meditation on this recording will help you to get in touch with pleasure in your body. That way, when you find yourself pulled into thoughts during sex, you have this practice of coming back to the body, coming back to the sensations of pleasure. So give it a try and let me know how it goes. Thanks. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit and then we'll do a little meditation together. I didn't know until I started writing about and teaching about mindfulness and sex how needed it was. I think I sometimes live in a bubble, and it's like me in the bubble. And like, I forget that it's not just me, that there's lots of people, and people are having all kinds of different experiences. And just because for me it's normal now, didn't used to be, but normal now to look into someone's eyes when I have sex with them, or to be in touch with the sensations in my body when I'm having sex, or want to connect and be intimate with another person. Just because all of that is just normal for me doesn't mean that that's the case for other people. In fact, for most people it's not. And that's what I found. And I found even in mindfulness communities, there's not much emphasis put on sexuality. There's Tantra, and that's a beautiful practice with long lineages and a lot of powerful stuff. But that's not secular per se, and its framework is a specific set of metaphysical beliefs. And if that's helpful, great, and I borrow from it absolutely, because there's a lot of really good stuff in there. But if you can't kind of buy into that set of beliefs, it's hard to really maybe get the full benefit of it. But I also think that because it's a very specific thing, the same way that oming or orgasmic meditation, one taste, is a specific thing, it doesn't leave room for the people that don't necessarily fit within that specific thing. And so what's been really interesting to me is to talk about how bringing mindfulness, bringing spirituality, if you like the word, into sexuality, how that can be accessible, how that can be secular, how that can be inclusive, regardless of gender, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of whether you have a monogamous long-term partner or multiple polyamorous partners, or if you're single. So a partner actually isn't required for mindful sex. There's certain things within mindful sex that you can't do without a partner, but you can do a lot of this stuff on your own. So So the number one thing, well, there's a few number one things. One of the number one things that I hear from people is that they get really caught in their head during sex. Hey, there's a cat joining us. You're not allowed in here, kitty. Come on. Out you go. The cat is interested in mindful sex, I guess. So, one of the number one things I hear is that people get really caught in their head about sex. Whether it's thinking about it before it happens and how it's going to go, or thinking about it during, which is often the case, or thinking about it after. And generally, none of these are super positive thoughts. They're usually anxious or judgmental or fearful. And so one of the first things I like to offer people is to just get in touch with their body. And you guys are all experienced meditators, so that's something you already know how to do. We can forget, even when we're experienced meditators, that going into the body and what we're actually feeling in the body is a really great thing to do. Especially if we've been wired a certain way based on past experiences, based on religious beliefs, based on whatever it is, right? Like we have, especially in this country, we have a lot of hang-ups about sex. And having a hardcore meditation practice doesn't necessarily get rid of those hang-ups about sex. In fact, sometimes we can hide behind our spirituality. We can bypass that stuff. And, that happens. That's another reason why I feel like it's a really important topic. It's something to talk about, something to, shine light on. Because when we're bypassing something, whatever it is, whether it's some sort of emotional pain, whether it's some kind of physical pain, whether it's a belief we have about ourselves, we're sort of bypassing and going into like, well, I can transcend that, and there is no self, and it's all empty anyway. We really miss out on being human. And for me, that's what I'm doing here. I definitely, for a little while, thought that I was going to transcend and become this enlightened, never feel pain, never be sad, always be blissful and helping others nonstop, never having to sleep. And eventually you just realize that's just not how it goes. Unless you seclude yourself away not even in a monastery, because there's a lot going on in a monastery, but really take yourself out of the world. Yes, there's a certain kind of enlightenment that can happen in that environment, but if you're in the world, it needs to be practical, right? And so in the world, not everyone, but a lot of us have sexual relationships. And the idea that that's somehow separate from who we are sexually, that idea, that belief is very limiting. So this is also a way that we connect with people, and we connect with some of the people we love the most. So if we're shut down and shut off and not in our bodies and not looking, not able to look, I'm not saying we always have to be gazing into each other's eyes, but not able to connect in that way, we're missing out on a huge part of human connection. So for me, especially these last couple years, it's been about how can I be more human? How can I be more of this world? Because I think that's where the real work is. Awakening, as what the Buddhists would say, as a householder. Awakening in the context of the world and career and relationship and family, money and sex. that's a whole different ball of wax. Like that's like hardcore. And so we're all doing that. So that's something to celebrate and to recognize how hard that is. I was listening or watching a talk from Noah Levine, actually, about sexuality from the Buddhist perspective. And he was talking about how, I'll misquote him, but it was like, being celibate is actually easier. Like, it seems like it's so hard, right? Like, oh my God, celibacy. But it's actually easier when you get into it and you learn how to work with the cravings that come up. Because when you're actually in the world and interacting with people, like that's intense. And when you're interacting with them in romantic and sexual ways, that's really intense. Like, if you want to know like how your meditation is going, like how your spiritual practice is going, then like get in a relationship and you'll find out. Because all your stuff will come up. And so bringing mindfulness into our daily life and into our sex life is very revolutionary. And if we're willing to do it, we start to model it for others. You know, whether that's mindfully, you know, driving your car, or mindfully like picking your kid up in the carpool, or, you know, mindfully ordering your meal at a restaurant, or mindfully having sex with someone, whether that's your long-term partner or one-night stand you picked up at a club. Like, if you can bring mindfulness and awakeness and presence into your interactions with other people, you're giving them such a gift. And who knows how that affects them and how they then go on to affect others. And I just want to add in that mindful sex does not mean there have to be candles burning and a fountain flowing and like soft music and like lavender in the air. Like, it doesn't have to be that. Like, that's lovely. Like, that's great if that's your jam, or your jam sometimes. But you can absolutely have mindful sex, like I said, with a stranger, or with multiple people, or while you're tied up. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be sweet, unless you want it to be, right? Because of course mindful sex is consensual sex. So, what I want to do tonight is work with contacting and focusing on pleasure in the body. So, we'll do a relaxation exercise, which will probably be somewhat pleasurable when parts of your body relax, and you can then focus on those sensations. And then we'll just open it up to notice any types of sensations that feel pleasurable in your body. And I'm going to give you some options as well. One is to keep using that relaxation as a way to contact pleasurable sensations. Another option is to use thought, so to use words or images. And we're working with mindful sex tonight, so if you want to go there, go there. You can use something sexual in your thoughts if you like. You can also just use like puppies, or, you know, the beautiful beach you were on once. Like, whatever you want, whatever feels right for you. You can bring these images or these words up in your mind, and then notice where you experience pleasure as a result. So I'm not saying we're going to all sit here and have like, you can do this, but you don't have, the point is not to like get into this like craving state of like, oh my God, I got to like run home and tear my partner's clothes off or whatever. Because we're also working with equanimity, right? Like, we're also working with acceptance, and we're not grasping. Pleasure is much more enjoyable when we're not like holding on to it so tight. relaxation, even some crazy, wild, rough sex, is still a really important piece, because more blood is flowing when we're relaxed. We're more available in all kinds of ways, but we're definitely more available for pleasure. So we don't want to get into some sort of like worked up state. Instead, we want to allow that pleasure to move through our body and just let it come and go, right? Like, just let it move through. Notice how it changes. Notice the tingles. Notice the throbs. Notice the warmth. Notice the spreading, contracting. Notice it vanish. Notice it come back up. You know, it can be very much like waves or spikes. And when you start to tune into pleasure like this, you have more and more of it. You know, you start to get tuned into it. And if at any time you're finding you're getting pulled into thoughts, or you're getting pulled into things that aren't feeling good in your body, as experienced meditators, you all know what to do. You just come back to your object of focus, which in this case, for this meditation, is pleasure. So hopefully this positive feedback loop starts, where you're like focusing on pleasure, which makes you feel more pleasure, which focusing on more pleasure, and it builds, and it's this sort of beautiful flow of pleasant experience. But if you get pulled away, if you do the whole like, darn it, you know, I can't even focus on pleasure, or I'm the worst, you know, it's just going to add this negative connotation to the experience. So instead it's just like, oh yeah, cool, so I got pulled off. It feels good to notice that I get pulled off. Like, it feels good to recognize that happened and wake up. Like this little mini awakening right there when you realize you've been caught off in thought that you're not intentionally trying to create in this case. And so notice how it feels good to wake up. And you're right back in the meditation. Makes sense? Okay, so we will get started. Go ahead and settle into your posture. And just notice right away how good it feels to sit. If you have a regular meditation practice, even if you haven't been practicing for a little while, there's just this feeling of ease and of comfort that happens when we sit down in our meditation posture. And so taking a moment to really feel into the foundation of your posture, the feeling of your butt on the cushion, your legs on the floor. Just really feeling into that. And then lengthening your spine. And inviting your body to relax. So we'll start at the top of the head. And as we do this, pay particular attention to the pleasure that becomes available as you relax. We'll invite this relaxation to move down from the top of the head over the scalp. Continuing to invite that relaxation to move down into the forehead, softening the forehead. And relaxing your eyebrows and the space between your eyebrows. Relaxing into your eyes, relaxing the gaze behind your eyelids, relaxing all the little muscles around your eyes, softening and letting go. And relaxing down over your cheeks and into your jaw. And releasing the jaw, letting the mouth drop open a little. Letting go of whatever tension you can in the jaw. And relaxing into the neck. Inviting that relaxation over your shoulders, letting the shoulders drop. And continuing to really be present for whatever pleasure is available in the body as you relax. From the shoulders, then relaxing into the arms. And relaxing all the way down into the hands. Maybe feeling a slight pleasurable tingle in the hands. Relaxing the chest. Feeling the relaxation and release with each exhale. Relaxing into the stomach. Really letting the stomach go. Relaxing the sides of the torso. And relaxing your back. You can start at the upper back. And we're using whatever muscles we need for sitting, but then you can really allow whatever we don't need for sitting to relax. So the upper back, releasing and relaxing. Space between the shoulder blades, relaxing. Maybe the shoulders drop a little lower. And relaxing the mid-back. And relaxing down into the lower back. And if you find as you've relaxed down the back that you need to adjust your posture slightly, you can always do that. And bringing that relaxation to the hips and the pelvic area and the butt. So really letting all of that relax. And maybe as you release in these areas, there's some pleasurable sensation. It's also not uncommon for relaxing in this area to bring up tension in other areas. So if that happens, do your best to continue to relax in the hips, the butt, and the pelvic area as you also relax whatever else is tightening up. And so in yoga, we draw up the pelvic floor. And here, for our meditation practice, we want to release it. And then we begin to relax down the legs, feeling the heaviness and the relaxation of the legs. All the way down into the feet relaxing. Just notice what feels most relaxed right now, what parts of the body feel especially relaxed. And tune into the pleasure of that relaxation. And without grasping, without trying to hold on to it or trying to push something that doesn't feel good away, just simply feel and enjoy the pleasure that's there. It can be a big area of the body where you're experiencing this, or it might just be a tiny, tiny spot. And your only job is to just keep coming back to this sensation of pleasure or sensations of pleasure. Just keep coming back and pouring your attention into that sensation, really feeling it, feeling your body with your body, using your physical awareness to explore these sensations of pleasure, no matter how subtle. So for some, just the sensation of breathing in and out with a relaxed body is wildly pleasurable. So you might start by just tuning into that sensation of the breath. Noticing what feels good about it. Where's the pleasure in breathing? And if you're not one of those people, you certainly do not have to stay with the breath. Just something to explore and check out. Perhaps just the experience of sitting still and relaxing is already creating a lot of pleasure in the body. And we just keep coming back to those pleasurable sensations and really feeling them. It's very easy to get drawn to what doesn't feel good. And it's very easy to get drawn into thought. And so, as we're learning to focus on pleasure, it's a practice, and it always will be. So we're not trying to get it right or perfectly experience pleasure. Instead, we're just doing our best to keep returning to it. We're doing our best to really zoom in on it and let it envelop us. Give it all of your attention. Coming back whenever you get pulled off, without judgment, just returning, soaking back into the pleasure that's available. And if at any time you want to again move through the body and relax, you can do that. And at this point, if you haven't already and you'd like to, you can begin to use words and images in your mind to encourage pleasurable sensations in the body. So even if you want to spend most of the time with something non-sexual, I invite you to just bring one sexual thought to mind, just so you can see what it's like. to notice what happens in your body. And then if you want to keep working with that, you can. And if it doesn't feel comfortable for you, then switch off to something else. Maybe revisit it before we're done. Do what feels right for you. And just keep coming back to pleasure. Enjoying it without grasping it. Enjoying it without resisting anything else. And allowing yourself to enjoy it. You deserve to feel good. You deserve to feel pleasure. And notice if at any time some sort of pleasure arises in the body and your mind says, hey, that's not spiritual, I'm not supposed to feel that. And say, okay, well, thanks for the input. And then come back to feeling it. Because there's not anything that isn't spiritual. Spiritual is a word that we use for something very, 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 very vast and mysterious. It's not limited, certainly not limited by our minds. If there's anything that's tightened up in the body, go ahead and release it. Feeling the pleasure of that relaxation. Remembering you can intentionally, consciously use thought if that's helpful for encouraging relaxation and pleasure. And just keep being willing to show up for the pleasure that's there. Okay, so you can begin to let go of the technique. And we'll take just a few minutes here at the end to simply do nothing. So letting go of any kind of meditating, any kind of doing. And just give yourself a few moments to be. And that doesn't mean the mind will be quiet or the body will be perfectly peaceful. It might be, but certainly doesn't mean that the environment around us will be quiet. We're in a space that's very rich with sound. So rather than engaging with any of that, just allow it to arise and pass. Just hang out with all of it without trying to control it in any way, without doing anything at all. And when you find yourself doing, just go ahead and drop that intention to do. Okay, taking your time. When you feel ready, go ahead and open your eyes and start to let in some of the candlelight. So we'll open up the space for questions and discussion. First, I just wanted to add two things. One is that this is something you can do in action during your day, and you'd be really surprised to see how many pleasurable things happen on any given day. Even if you're not getting a massage that day, or having sex that day, or eating your favorite food that day, it's pleasurable to drink a glass of water when you're thirsty. It's pleasurable to lie down when you're tired. It's pleasurable to eat after you've worked out and you're really hungry. It's pleasurable to pee when you really need to. It's pleasurable just to relax and take a few deep breaths. So something you can do is just start tune into this more and more during the day, and that's going to sensitize you to pleasure. And so not only will just day-to-day things be more enjoyable and pleasurable in that way, you'll also be creating this very equanimous relationship with it, because you're greeting it with mindfulness, not with grasping. You're greeting it with this open, curious attitude. And of course, by tuning into pleasure in this way during your day, it's going to come into play with sex as well. You're going to be that much more attuned and sensitized to your own pleasure. And as anyone who meditates knows, the more that you are tuned into what's happening for you, the more you're tuned into what's happening for other people. And so by being more sensitized to your own pleasure, you become more sensitized to your partner's pleasure. And it becomes this really lovely deepening between you guys, and they feel good because you feel good because they feel good, you know. And keep encouraging that sort of leaning into. It's so funny. It's not funny, it's sad that for many people sex doesn't feel nearly as good as it can. Not nearly. And I say that from personal experience, and I've always been someone who's really into sex, very sex positive. But over the years, as I've incorporated my spiritual life and my spirituality into my sex life, and incorporated mindfulness into my sex life, it's been amazing to see what happens. To see how my relationship to my sexuality and to pleasure and to intimacy has changed, and just how much better it can feel. Just month to month. It's kind of amazing. So the other thing I wanted to add along those lines was I didn't want to make it sound like you shouldn't go home and rip your partner's clothes off if you have someone's clothes to rip off. Absolutely, by all means do that. More what I meant was to just start to talk about the equanimity and the acceptance we want to bring into it. Whether it's sitting and meditating on pleasure, whether it's having sex, we want to be open and allowing the experience to move through. So, go home and do what you will tonight. Rip your own clothes off if you don't have anyone's clothes to rip off. And we'll open it up.